Hey, welcome back! Today we're talking about Beowulf, and we're looking at the monster fight, the fight with Grendel that we've been anticipating all of this time. That is lines 702 to 873. When we last left our hero, Beowulf had entered into Hrothgar's hall and introduced himself, and he was introduced to a series of checkpoints, characters who reflected something about Beowulf. We had the Sea Watcher, we had Wulfgar, we had Hrothgar himself. Then we had Unferth, who tried to throw a wrench in the works. But Beowulf bested him in a boasting match, a flighting. And finally we had his interaction with the Queen Wealhtheow, before whom he made another official boast. And as he lay down to sleep, he said, "I will not fight Grendel with any weapons or armor. I'm gonna fight him man to monster." The next scene, the fight with Grendel, is incredibly vivid and cinematic. It begins with the slow creep of Grendel towards Heorot. Then out of the night came the shadow stalker, stealthy and swift. The hall guards were slack, asleep at their posts, all except one. It was widely understood that as long as God disallowed it, the fiend could not bear them to his shadow born. One man, however, was in a fighting mood, awake and on edge, spoiling for action. Off in the moors, down through the mist bands, God-cursed Grendel came greedily loping. The bane of the race of men roamed forth, hunting for prey in the high hall. Under the cloud murk, he moved towards it until it shone above him, a sheer keep of fortified gold. And so there's that slow approach, and meanwhile we see the thanes lying in the hall, sleeping, all except for Beowulf, who's lying awake. And the monster comes closer and closer. And next in the description, there's this delightful contrast between Grendel's expectation of what he's going to find there. He expects to find more helpless warriors to feast upon, but we know that the tide is about to turn for him. He's about to face a hero beyond his skill. Nor was that the first time he had scouted the grounds of Hrothgar's dwelling, although never in his life, before or since, did he find harder fortune or hall defenders. And so we have that Anglo-Saxon foreshadowing. This is going to be the hardest experience he's ever had in the hall. Spurned and joyless, he journeyed on ahead and arrived at the bawn. The iron braced door turned on its hinge when his hands touched it. Then his rage boiled over. He ripped open the mouth of the building, maddening for blood, pacing the length of the patterned floor with his loathsome tread, while the baleful light, flame more than light, flared from his eyes. He saw many men in the mansion sleeping, a ranked company of kinsmen and warriors quartered together, and his glee was demonic, picturing the mayhem. Before morning he would rip life from limb and devour them, feed on their flesh. But his fate that night was due to change. His days of ravening had come to an end. His expectation of devouring meets with the weird of his doom coming to end his reign of terror. We then cut to Beowulf, who's lying there on the bench. Mighty and canny, Higelac's kinsman was keenly watching for the first move the monster would make. Nor did the creature keep him waiting, but struck suddenly and started in. He grabbed and mauled a man on the bench, bit into his bone lappings, bolted down his blood, and gorged on him in lumps, leaving the body utterly lifeless, eaten up hand and foot. Venturing closer, his talon was raised to attack Beowulf where he lay on the bed. He was bearing in with open claw, when the alert hero's comeback and arm lock forestalled him utterly. So there's this fun, again, reversal. Grendel eats somebody up, one of Beowulf's friends, but then he comes closer and his claw is reaching for Beowulf. The poetry isn't completely clear about whether he grabs Beowulf first and then Beowulf grabs him, or exactly how this works. But the grabber becomes the grabby in the moment. And so as he reaches his claw down for Beowulf, Beowulf grabs his arm, and the two of them begin the most epic arm wrestling match of all time. The captain of evil discovered himself in a hand grip harder than anything he had ever encountered in any man on the face of the earth. Every bone in his body quailed and recoiled, but he could not escape. He was desperate to flee to his den and hide with the devil's litter, for in all his days he had never been clamped or cornered like this. Then Higelac's trusty retainer recalled his bedtime speech, sprung to his feet, got a firm hold. Fingers were bursting, the monster backtracking, the man overpowering. The dread of the land was desperate to escape, to take a roundabout road and flee to his lair in the fens. The latching power in his fingers weakened. It was the worst trip the terrormonger had taken to Heorot. And a lovely light-a-taste there at the end. Boy, this was not a fun trip to Heorot. Ironic understatement. Beowulf has his grip on Grendel's arm and won't let go, no matter how much Grendel struggles and tries to free himself. As their struggle continues, they start smashing up everything inside the hall. Heorot is strong enough to withstand their blows, but the benches are being ripped up and smashed, the tables are all destroyed. Then an extraordinary wail arose, and bewildering fear came over the Danes. Everyone felt it who heard that cry as it echoed off the wall, a god-cursed scream and strain of catastrophe, the howl of the loser, the lament of the hell serf keening his wound. He was overwhelmed, manacled tight by the man who of all men was foremost and strongest in the days of this life. It's a lovely shift from the beginning of this little bit of poetry to the end. It starts with this extraordinary, horrible sound that terrifies the Danes. And what is the sound? Well, it's the sound of their terror, the monster who's been terrorizing them, being destroyed. He's wailing in his fear. And yet that fear is echoed in the Danes. They hear this horrible sound, but it's just the monster they've been afraid of so long in horrible agony as he's destroyed. Chickering compares this wail to the song that was sung earlier that enraged Grendel so much. It was a song of celebration of creation. But this song, this wail, is his destruction. It continues, but the Earl Troop's leader was not inclined to allow this caller to depart alive. He did not consider that life of much account to anyone, anywhere. More light-a-taste. Nobody really cares about Grendel's life. And all of a sudden we get, what have Beowulf's men been doing this whole time? As their hall is being smashed up all around them. Well, they've tried to get in on the action. They've jumped up and tried to help defend Beowulf. Time and again, Beowulf's warriors worked to defend their lord's life, laying about them as best they could with their ancestral blades. Stalwart in action, they kept striking out on every side, seeking to cut straight to the soul. When they joined the struggle, there was something they could not have known at the time, that no blade on earth, no blacksmith's art could ever damage their demon opponent. He had conjured the harm from the cutting edge of every weapon, but his going away out of this world and the days of his life would be agony to him, and his alien spirit would travel far into the fiend's keeping. And so we finally understand another reason why Grendel has been so hard to defeat, and why he's destroyed so many heroes in the past. He's invulnerable to any bladed weapon. It's only through Beowulf stripping himself away and putting himself on an even playing field, fighting hand to hand with Grendel, that he's actually able to hurt Grendel. The conjuring harm away from every cutting edge might recall to mind the story of Balder from Norse myth. He's so beloved of all the gods that every weapon and everything in all of the universe swears not to harm him. Somehow Grendel has conjured some sort of charm against all sharp blades so that none will be able to harm him. But that doesn't mean he's immortal. And the lines about his death becoming an agony are definitely a foreshadowing of what's about to happen. Then he who had harrowed the hearts of men with pain and affliction in former times, and had given offense also to God, found that his bodily powers failed him. Higelac's kinsman kept him helplessly locked in a hand grip. As long as either lived, he was hateful to the other. The monster's whole body was in pain. A tremendous wound appeared on his shoulder. Sinews split and the bone lappings burst. Beowulf was granted the glory of winning. Grendel was driven under the fen banks, fatally hurt, to his desolate lair. His days were numbered, and the end of his life was coming over him. He knew it for certain, and one bloody clash had fulfilled the dearest wish of the Danes. So the arm wrestling match ends with Beowulf actually ripping Grendel's arm all the way off. His shoulder splits and tears away, and he runs off into the fens to die in his swamp. We see Beowulf's tremendous strength, but as throughout this poem, we see Beowulf is granted the power to defeat Grendel. There's hints of both weird and providence in that. And in his victory, he's able to hang the giant arm and claw of Grendel above the door for everyone to look at. In the morning, everyone gathers around to find out what happens. They see Grendel's footprints there by the door. They see that he's run off, leaving blood along the way. It says, his fatal departure was regretted by no one who witnessed his trail, the ignominious marks of his flight where he'd skulked away, exhausted in spirit and beaten in battle, bloodying the path, hauling his doom to the demon's mare. Nobody was going to miss him. Nobody regretted this monster being driven away and killed. Again, another example of Lydetes. And again, we have this fun mirror in language of Grendel's stumbling away into the swamp and diving down into the water, leaking out the last of his blood as he sinks. And the men riding their horses and having a horse race in their celebration of the defeat of Grendel. And we have something of a chaos of celebration the next day. The blend of the cadence of the men riding their horses out to see the trail that Grendel left behind, the stumbling of Grendel from the night before, and all of this is blended with a poet who is in the process of quickly composing lines to celebrate Beowulf's victory. At times the warband broke into a gallop, letting their chestnut horses race wherever they found the going good on those well-known tracks. Meanwhile, a thane of the king's household, a carrier of tales, a traditional singer deeply schooled in the lore of the past, linked a new theme to a strict meter. The man started to recite with skill, rehearsing Beowulf's triumphs and feats in well-fashioned lines, entwining his words. I want to save the actual poem that the Shope sings for next time, because it's complicated and there's a lot of excellent stuff in the celebration after Grendel's fall. But as we close this section, I want to also point out that as they are praising and celebrating Beowulf, no one is disregarding Hrothgar. Beowulf's doing were praised over and over again. Nowhere, they said, north or south, between the two seas, or under the tall sky on the broad earth, was there anyone better to raise a shield or to rule a kingdom. Yet there was no laying of blame on their lord, the noble Hrothgar. He was a good king. Our extravagant celebration of Beowulf doesn't take away from the fact that they still admire their own lord, even though he could do nothing against Grendel. And Beowulf, they praise him to the skies here and talk about what a perfect leader he is. And it's a question that we're going to continue to pursue. Is Beowulf a perfect leader? And can he avoid all the pitfalls of power? Next time we will explore the after party and all the celebrating that goes on now that Grendel has finally been defeated. Thanks for watching. You can click to subscribe or to watch another video, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
1, 2, 3, go. I'm still stronger than you.